Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the big time storylines going into the year for the SEC. As you can imagine, Arch Manning is going to top that list. He's going to be talked about as much as you can talk about one individual on one team. I can promise you that. He is as anticipated of a quarterback as we have seen ever in college football, and it is going to be talked about like that. It already has been talked about like that almost ad nauseum. But at the end of the day, let's get into the tiers as I see it in this conference, because I think the first one is pretty clear cut. I think the second one's an absolute nightmare, and we'll get into that here in a second. But the top four is the big four, as I like to call it. Whenever you're talking about the SEC going into the season, pretty much from the start of the offseason till right now, you're talking about Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and LSU. Now, sometimes people will drop LSU out of that group. They'll just have those three teams in Georgia, Alabama, and Texas in there, but I do think LSU factors into this conversation. I do think they are a good enough team. They have the most experienced quarterback among this group by a very comfortable margin, and they absolutely have upgraded on the defensive side of the ball from a personnel standpoint. We don't know how that'll develop on the field, and that's something to remain to be seen, but this is a team that absolutely can win this conference this year, can even win the national title this year, as far as I'm concerned. So there's these four teams, to me, just stand above the pack. Georgia is always going to be in that realm as long as Kirby Smart's around. Quite a few changes, no doubt about that, but love the young talent they have there. I think KJ Bolden is someone that's going to become a household name by the end of the year. Alabama, Ty Simpson is going to be the quarterback. Everything else looks great. The wide receiver room is elite. The offensive line's as good as you're going to find in the entire country. The running back room, although relatively unknown names outside of Jamarian Miller, I think they're going to be more than fine. I love the defense with veteran and younger talent on it. Bray Hubbard is one of my favorite players in the entire country. They're going to be a very, very good team in Kalen DeBoer's second year. And then you got Texas, obviously going to be in this conversation. Might be the best defense in the entire country. By my estimations, they are the best defense in the entire country heading into this season. And if Arch Manning is 50% of what Paul Feinbaum tells us that he's going to be, this is going to be a really good team, and they're probably going to win the national title. Now, I think he's going to be a really, really good player. We'll see how Paul's takes look at the end of the year, but at the end of the day, these are the four teams, in my mind, that are leading this conference by a pretty comfortable margin in some respects. Then you get to this group, and I call it the CFP or bust group, but some of these might have a little bit more wiggle room than I'm talking about right now. But I do think these 8 fan bases are going into this year saying, why not us? Why can't we make the CFP? And some are a little bit more justified than others. And we'll start with one that's a little bit teetering for me, and that's Auburn. The wide receiver core is as elite as can be. I think it might be the best in the country outside of Columbus, Ohio. And you have the defensive talent with Keldrick Falk, with a couple of other players that are going to play big-time roles for you. I think they have the guys. Even last year, when you're talking about a team that was pretty much top 20 in offense and defense, and just turned over the ball way too much. And it's something that has happened quite a bit with Hugh Freeze teams in the past that he has to get fixed. But at the end of the day, I think that fan base wants to go to the CFP. And I know that fan base wants to go to the CFP this year. How much they're expecting that, I don't know. That's kind of the big time question. Would 8-4 be fine? I know 9-3 would be okay. Are they expecting a CFP berth? I think it's all a little bit all over the place for Auburn. Nonetheless, they are a hugely hyped up team going into this year. They upgraded pretty much across the board when it talks about talent. Another offensive line that's going to be super, super forceful in the run game. I feel pretty good about this team. I don't know exactly where the expectations fall, but I do know they are a team that are looking at the season and saying, why can't we be the next team to make the CFP from the SEC? Why can't we be the 4th or 5th team in this conference that possibly joins that fun at the end of the year? Then you got Florida. If DJ Lagway is healthy, I think this fan base is looking at 10 wins. I think they feel that confident in what they have, and frankly, I might be with them. Now, that could go sour very quickly. Obviously, if you lose that game to Miami, I believe in week 3, if DJ Lagway isn't playing against LSU and you lose that one, things tumble very quickly, and I think Billy Napier tumbles with them. But at the end of the day, I think going into this season, if you were to tell Florida fans you're going to have DJ Lagway fully healthy 100% for all of the games, they would tell you they're going to the playoff. And I think that's not necessarily an overly crazy thing to say. The schedule's an absolute nightmare, but they are a team that is uniquely talented, and I think that fan base, as long as Lagway is healthy, I can't say that enough, as long as he is healthy, will have big time expectations this year. Then you got Missouri. They bought in Bo Pribula, and you look at the schedule, it sets up really nicely for the Tigers. And it's one of those things where I felt like they left a little bit on the table last year. It felt like a team that absolutely was set up with a schedule that was very advantageous, could very much put them in a position to possibly get to the CFP, and they fell a little bit short. Actually, they fell pretty comfortably short of the expectations that I had for them a year ago. They're going to have to upgrade in a number of different places. I think they did a great job in the portal, grabbing a couple of different guys, but it is going to be a tall order for this team. The schedule sets up really nicely, and I think every Missouri fan would tell you right now they expect to at least be in the CFP conversation at the end of the year. Oklahoma, the exact same thing. You bring over John Mateer, you feel confident that your offense is going to be more talented this year. You bring in Jay Knott, that obviously helps as well, and then a couple of guys in the wide receiver room that are going to have to be huge. The offensive line seems to be still not very set, which makes me a little bit nervous, but at the end of the day, I think every Oklahoma fan will look you in the face and say, we are going to be a playoff team this year. John Mateer is going to bring us to that level that we belong at in a lot of respects. So I think Oklahoma fully expects the CFP run, or at least, again, being in that conversation late in the season. Ole Miss barely missed a chance last year. They really got a taste for what it would be like to be in the CFP, and then they kind of snatched it away from themselves when they went down to Gainesville and took that loss to Florida. The reality is they want to be in the CFP this year. There's a lot of change down there. So maybe the fans have a little bit more leniency when it comes to the amount of wins they're expecting this year from Lane Kiffin and company. But at the end of the day, I do think this is a team that was right on the outside last year. They want to jump into the party. And I do think they have the ability to. I also think they have the ability to be the team that falls off a cliff and things just go catastrophically wrong for a number of different reasons. And they're at the end of the year looking up thinking, was last year just kind of an anomaly, or was this an anomaly? So that'll be an interesting thing to watch with them. Same situation with South Carolina. Love Lenora Sellers. They were right on the outside last year. They want to take that next step forward. A lot of change. There's no doubt about that. There's so many different things that are changing around this team, including Dowell Loggins moving on and becoming the App State head coach. That fan base will tell you that they are going to be elite this year. That fan base will tell you that they are going to go to the CFP this year, and I don't necessarily fully disagree with them. It is going to be a tall order, and they are caught in this, sea of teams that very much want to do the very same thing. Obviously, they have a quarterback that can get them there. It's going to be a really interesting thing to watch, and definitely something that is going to inform the conversation around Shane Beamer for quite some time. Then you got Tennessee. Even with the quarterback change, they were in the CFP a year ago. The defense returns a lot of really talented guys. I think they expect to very much be in this conversation. Now, will they is obviously very much up for debate, but I do think they are a team that maybe not CFP or bust, partly because of the quarterback change and all the craziness that went on with Iamaliava. I feel like Josh Heupel has a lot of goodwill stored up with that fan base, but at the end of the day, if they went 8-4, 7-5, there would be a lot of frustration from that fan base, no doubt about it. And then Texas A&M kind of rounds this thing out. Marcel Reed in this run game is going to be one of the best in the country. I think they expected the defense to continue to take steps forward under Mike Elko, and I think this is another fan base that would tell you they expect to be in the playoff this year, or at the very least, again, expect to be in the conversation. So all these teams, it'll be varying results and it'll be varying reactions from the fan base. Maybe Auburn goes 8-4 and the fan base is totally fine. Maybe Tennessee goes 8-4 or 9-3 and the fan base is totally fine. But I know all these fan bases are looking at the CFP and saying, at the very least, why not us? In some respects, they're saying we are going to be in that group this year. Someone's going to leave disappointed. In fact, multiple of these teams are going to leave disappointed. We'll just have to figure out who those teams are going to be. Then you got teams that, in my opinion, absolutely will throw a wrench into this conference. And I got Vandy, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia, I understand he's talking about a national title run and a CFP run. I think they're going to fall a little bit short of that. Respectfully, I do think it's going to be a little bit tough for them to find their way to the CFP this year. I know Diego Pavia is going to be really tough to deal with, though. And I love Cedric Alexander. They still have Junior Sherrill on the outside that makes some big-time plays. They have the best tight end in the country as far as I'm concerned, Eli Stowers. It's going to be a really good football team. And it's one of those teams that plays their game really effectively, moves the ball down the field, doesn't get ahead of themselves, doesn't panic, and they have a quarterback that leads that way. So it's going to be a team that I don't necessarily think is going to, continue what they started last year and do some incredible things this year. I do think they're going to be one of those teams that every team shows up and says, we got to be about our P's and Q's today because they will absolutely hand us a loss if we're not careful. Then you got Arkansas, and I think it's as simple as you catch Taylor Green on the wrong day, you are going to get got. He is an incredible athlete, maybe the best athlete not named Lenora Sellers in this conference. He is going to make one team pay this year. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know where it happens. Could be Tennessee again, maybe. But at the end of the day, he is going to get someone this year. That team is going to get someone this year. You just got to figure out where it's going to be, because this is a very, very talented quarterback that just might not be in the best situation around him. But at the end of the day, when he gets rolling, it's very, very hard to stop. And then Mississippi State. I think this team is much better than people are giving him credit for. Now, I don't know if they're going to be elite. I don't know if they're going to get to 8 or 9 wins. I do know they're going to get... I don't know this. I feel pretty confident that they're going to sneak up on a team or two this year. There's going to be a couple of games, maybe even an out-of-conference game against an Arizona State team that is riding very high this year. But if Blake Shapen is healthy and Jeff Lebby can run the stuff that he wants to run, we know what that looks like. We know what it looked like over there at Oklahoma a couple of years ago. I think it could look something relatively similar. I don't think you have a Dylan Gabriel at quarterback by any means, but I do think you have plenty of weapons to make something interesting happen and maybe get 1 or 2 big-time upsets this year and change the conversation around Mississippi State from they're the worst team in the SEC, no doubt about it, to maybe they're a team that's putting something together under Jeff Lebby. And then I got Kentucky. And I got Kentucky all the way down at the bottom. I really hate to do it. It's not going to be a great year. It's just not a very talented team. I like Zach Calzada. I don't love Zach Calzada. I think they don't have any absolute difference makers on offense after losing, obviously, Barian Brown and Dane Key to the portal. They're in a tough spot. I'll put it that way. I just think Kentucky's one of those teams that you look at this year, I'm having a really hard time figuring out a way for them to get to a bowl game. Now, they could very well be one of those teams that throws a wrench into things. Obviously, Mark Stoops teams are always going to be very, very well coached and have the ability to make something happen any given Saturday, but it's going to be a tough challenge for them. There's no doubt about it. I think they're looking at a year that probably is relatively disappointing for Kentucky. But overall, I think all these tiers are very malleable, especially that one in the middle, the CFP or bust tier. It totally depends on what those fans are thinking. So if Auburn's not, it would be more than fine with 8 wins, that's totally fine. But I do think they at least have the CFP sort of on their mind in some respects. I think the same thing for Oklahoma, for Tennessee, especially with the offseason craziness that they had over there. I think they'd be a little bit more understanding, but absolutely, all those teams want to be in the CFP conversation. Someone's not going to be there. In fact, the number of those teams are not going to be there, and it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation around that fan base and possibly around that coach in some of those respects. But we'll talk about all of that as it unfolds. Obviously, some of those teams are going to rise to the challenge, and it's going to be really, really awesome to watch. But let's take our second break here. When we come back, let's get to some players to know. There are a ton of really talented wide receivers in this conference that I think are going to hit it big this year, and I want to talk about them all right after this, so stick with us.